Okay, I'd like to call the Architectural Review Panel meeting of May 12th to order. I'd like to take roll call of the panelists who are here. Will Shepard.
Alan DeBach.
Supriya Kulkarni.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's just a word of how we're going to order things. We're going to go through the project first. And if you recall, this panel is all about the architecture of the building, the aesthetics, the massing, things of those natures, what it looks like. Not anything about public policy or planning policy or anything that the smart people are dealing with, right? We're just trying to pretty it up. So with those comments, I'm going to take the public comments, which are always welcome, but usually at the front. I'm going to put them after we present everything. In case there's any questions in your mind, that the same question you would have asked might potentially be answered while you listen to us discuss the project. And remember, this is not a voting body. This is not a hearing. This is just a
Recommendation
body towards the Planning Commission. So with that in mind, I would like to go to the consent items, which is the review and approval of the minutes.
Real quickly, before you do that, I just have one announcement. I want you all to meet Angela Georgia, our associate planner. She's been here for about 8 months now.
Started in August, yeah.
In August last year. So you guys haven't had a chance to meet her till today. So just wanted to introduce you. And you guys introduce yourselves. So now she knows who you are.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have you, Angela. Okay, so we have some minutes to approve. We can you've probably reviewed them. If there's a motion to approve the minutes as
Motion to
written.
approve the minutes is written.
I seconded.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, so now, topic of the day, review item. File number SPR 2022-011. Request for a site plan review to construct a new 60-foot 6 inches tall, 118,495 square foot mixed use building titled the Park Apartments, inclusive of a 1,600 square foot commercial space, counter service restaurant, and 107 residential units, 26.25% of which will be designated affordable, 16 units designated for low income households, 5 designated for very low income households. The project site is located at 24100 Park Sorrento, which is currently utilized as a parking lot for the Civic Center Complex, but also serves as the shared public parking for all uses within the Park Center master plan area. The site is located within the commercial mixed use CMU zoning district and within the affordable housing overlay. It's submitted by the developer Cruzan. Planners are Glenn and Jacqueline, who's not here today, but you've probably met her. And at this point, probably we turn it back over to the city for your review, and then for the developers' comments, and then the panelists will have a number of comments to add after that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief with my comments because I think the developer will do a better job in presenting what changes were made. This project was here on February 24th. The largest comment that this panel had was really that the applicant reconsider elements of the design to the city context in the Civic Center area in terms of massing, expression of architectural language, articulation, the materiality of the facades, especially those facing over here in City Hall in the public right of way. And then you guys asked for some cross section that kind of showed a broader context for the project, how it compares against the development on either side, north, south, and east, west. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the architect or the applicants to explain the changes that they made.
Thanks, Glenn. Can we confirm if Jonathan Watts is able to present on his screen?
Let me, we'd have to promote him to a panelist, so let me look for him here.
Yeah, probably on the screens there. Let's see if it's available first.
I don't see somebody named Jonathan Watts. WATTS?
Yeah. Christine Cho?
Yeah, Christine
There's
shows on
Jonathan.
here.
There's
Okay.
Jonathan.
We have a
Watts.
Jonathan Watts.
Okay, great.
Loud and
Let
talk.
me see if I can, let me promote him to panel.
Oh, there he is.
There you go.
Okay. It should be under panels. There we go. And then-
Jonathan, you should be available to talk.
There we go. It just took a while to load. Can you hear me?
There we go. We got you.
Great.
You want to request control of the screen?
Well, I don't know which file you're showing. It should be the ARP presentation file. I saw it up earlier when somebody was listing the file structure, or Christine could share.
Yeah, we're looking at the ARP file, a hard copy on the table, and it's also on the screen.
Okay, so we can just use this then, and I'll just say next slide if that's okay.
Now, just point out that we have just that one microphone right here, so let's keep that in mind.
Move that over to you, Tom, so that we can.
I can actually hear you all very well.
Wondering.
How do we get?
And just confirming this is exhibit A that has been sent to us. What is being presented right now?
I got rid of my packet. I loaned it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Loaned it to Alan. Exhibit A must be the drawings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Updated order format.
Right. So they're right there.
Okay, shall I dive in?
Yeah, Jonathan, please go ahead. We're on the cover page.
you have it
It has just the aerial of the site.
I don't know why.
Yeah. So I think you all know the site by now, obviously next to City Hall and near the Senior Center. If you can go to the next slide. I mean, I think I just preface this by saying that we really appreciate the comments. Are you going to scroll through on the screen, or shall I just bring up my own presentation on my screen?
Want to go ahead and try to bring yours up, Jonathan? We're having a little technical difficulties on our end right now.
Okay, no worries. I mean, I can see what you're looking at on my screen on the side as well. And so I think just, the preface, whilst you're seeing if you can bring those up, is that we really appreciated the comments and went back and took a little bit of a fresh look around the detailing of the project and how we might make it fit more into the sort of city style. And also this idea came up of placemaking and the public benefit, the city benefit. So those have been, okay, great. This is the slide, yeah. So that's what we've really been looking at. And even immediately you can see a big difference than before. Now we have tile roof all the way around the edge of the project, much the same way as the library treats, the look of the tile from the street or the office building across the road. And so that was a big change, how to integrate that more traditional roof style with what we had been working on before. If you go to the next slide, that was just where the views were. The next slide was really looking at this issue that we discussed last time that probably isn't really part of this review about public circulation from the project and the parking that's available, say, to get to the senior center. And one big change is we have added a pedestrian parking entry down there in the southeast corner with an elevator to the level below. So much simplified parking access to the building.
If I could ask you to pause for just a minute.
Yeah.
Angela, Glenn, as he talks about a particular feature, because you have control, you might want to be able to point to it with the pointer, because people who are looking on the screen up there might benefit from that. Okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Next slide, please. So I think, we've got all the usual elevations and sections and plans that we can discuss, but I'm going to focus on these next three slides, which are the renderings of the project and where I think you'll see the greatest difference. So one of the comments was about reconsidering the massing and articulation of the exterior. So 3 or 4 major points to bring up here. On the ground floor where we have the cafe and the entrance to the lobby of the project, we've added arches along that side set into a brick ground floor. And so, oh, actually, sorry, that part is plaster, not brick. The brick is showing up more at the pedestrian level lower down. And we've changed the colors. And as you can see, big picture, we've picked out this sort of very soft mushroom color, which has the effect of making the top floors go away a little bit, so seem more receded, and bring the, you know, the ground floor into play as a city placemaking idea that where the public is, we've enhanced the colors, the arches, the type of glazing, the landscaping, and have enhanced the railings. There's this now very pretty cutout steel screen with a sort of Spanish motif that up on the building we use as a sort of solar screen and as a just a decorative object in white. And then when we come down to where the railings are around the cafe seating, it's a nice sort of dark rusty brown color. And the idea is to try and bring that level of quality and thinking down to the ground floor. You can see at this corner as well, there are steps coming up off the street corner, flanked on either side by brick planters with landscaping. And instead of the glass that we had before as railings, as I said, we've gone to this steel patterned railing, and then there'll be umbrellas on there as well. So trying to make a place where it feels like there is a give back here, where people are welcome. And you'll see in the third rendering how we're doing that and the gap in between the two sort of sides of the building. So if, can you just go back one? There's a couple of other points to make. Up high, you'll see now the pitch roof and the eaves projecting out, which really soften the whole building. And, you know, obviously that's a very strong Spanish style motif. And that goes all the way around the building on all four sides. We've also added tile on the right-hand side of this image on the ground floor where the lobby is. And so that is slightly differentiated from the cafe with a tile roof and the wood eaves coming out from that to give it a little more detail, a little bit sort of more of that Spanish context. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. On this side, looking back from the senior center, first thing to notice is a colonnade all the way along the ground floor between the new lobby entrance to the parking. And there'll be parking behind here, so we'll have screens inset into the arches, but they'll also be lit and have planters in the arches themselves. So they'll form this really nice soft edge to the project. And it also has a tile roof along it. We've still got the 90-degree parking there in front of it, but you know, this serves to really bring the scale of the project down at the street and feel much more Spanish-like in its articulation. And then on the left side there on that corner, you see the arch into the pedestrian lobby that goes only to the parking levels. So that will be accessible by the public the whole time the building is open. And then again, on the top floor, using the raft details and the pitch roof, which has real clay tile roof on it, for each of the pieces as the building marches along, again, to bring the scale down and further articulate the project. And then the mushroom color for the inset where the balconies are and the breaks in between the buildings, again, to reduce the scale. Scott will talk more about the landscaping in a minute, but suffice to say that we've worked hard on, you know, the planters themselves and the planting. And, you know, you can see on the left there, the idea of growing some sort of creeper, whether it's ivy or something else up the side of the building, but trying to integrate the landscape with the architecture as much as we can. And then the final image of the renderings is the next slide. So this shows looking into, you know, at the sort of, and I don't know about other people's screens, but this is very cropped, my image. I don't know if you're on full screen, but the idea here obviously is we had this sort of grand entrance and staircase before. There we go, thank you. And we've worked a lot on this place to make it more of a place that belongs in the public realm, and this idea of city placemaking. So the planters have wood benches around them, brought the scale down a little bit. The central one will have a specimen tree in it so that you can sit in the shade on the steps we've added an alcove with planting in it on the side of the cafe that's on the left-hand side as you go up the steps. Again, just to sort of reduce the scale and make it feel much more Spanish style in its expression, and then still using patterned tiles on the stairs and the seating benches that go up in between the landscaping of this sort of central court area. So the idea is that people can bring a cup of coffee from, or their lunch from the cafe or from where they're working, and come and sit in this little bit of an oasis here along Park Sorrento. And we've brought the scale down a lot and tried to work with materials to enhance this place, including having a tree planted halfway up the steps. So there'll be real protection from the sun and shade. To the left, you see the cafe seating with the arches deeply set in and divided light windows and doors, and then this decorative steel railing to sort of, again, feel less corporate and feel much more in keeping with the style of City Hall and of the library. So those are the main changes we made in response to the 4 or 5 main comments. The next few slides, if you want to whiz through them, are really technical drawings, but just showing the top section there, stepping back as much as possible from Park Sorrento with the massing of the building and how the back of the building works up against the hillside. Next slide. The next few slides are just really technical elevations. And so it's more of what I described, but it's, just like a full-on elevation. So you begin to see the tile roofs more because you're not looking up from the street, you're looking directly at the building in this view. And the sort of width of the articulation in between the white pieces where we're setting back with the mushroom color, and then the colonnade across the base with its planting and roof and screen elements in it and lighting all baked in. Next slide. The other 2 elevations, oh no, this is going back to the front again. That was just showing material call outs. So we've seen that one really already. And then looking at the rear of the building, can you see the tile roof there? And then the next one. Again, looking, I think there are some duplicates here because we're, calling out the materials on some of them. So we can whiz through these. And then the height analysis showing how we're under the height limit. Next slide. And then just dwell briefly on some of the materials because we've tried to upgrade these acrylic plaster, which has a nice smooth finish and looks very much like older Spanish style plaster, and the 2 colors that we've selected, very warm, sort of inviting colors, clay tile, trellis work, and then the dark bronze colored and the white perforated metal screens, the type of windows. And then the brick blend that we're choosing is not a traditional deep red brick. We're looking at something a little more friendly, more buff colored with quite a lot of variation within the mix of the bricks that we'll use. Some siding shown in the bottom left, and then how we're looking at tile to accent a lot of the landscape areas, both at the front and in the courtyard. Then again, some more technical drawings, just, so that they're in the package. The plan, I don't think we'll go through. I mean, there's commercial at the front, as I spoke about in the lobby, and then the 2 bars of building with the units, and then some of the landscaping images here. Is Scott on? Do you want to quickly run through some of the landscape ideas, Scott?
Can you make Scott?
Scott, what's his last name?
Scott Van Suey. Can't be too many people of that name. And this is the architectural presentation. We put these in the end just to show the kind of quality of the space that we're trying to drive towards. I think there is a separate landscape presentation if you'd like Scott to run through it.
Not seeing Scott.
Land images?
Yeah.
Land images, yeah.
Does he need to share screen?
There you come.
I think you had the presentation. I saw it on your list.
Switch to the landscape drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
please.
let's,
Well, the landscape drawing right after.
okay, let's start with
Keep
the,
page, just going down, page down again. Okay.
ours are separate.
Yeah, your meeting of the landscape plan.
It's a separate package. There we
Is
go.
it? No,
How do you
I think it was,
see
I think it was a
that?
continuation of the package, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, just the
Yeah,
next
last
slide.
two.
Just a few slides. Are you on, Scott? Do you want to talk?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. So I'm Scott Van Suey with Land Images. And then Diane Fazio, I know, is listening in also, who worked on this with me. So yeah, I'll just sort of mostly highlight what we changed from the last time, but and give you a brief overview. Again, as Jonathan said, our sort of material palette is a sort of a Mediterranean style patterned, heavily patterned palette with sort of soft colors. Our plant palette is something similar. It's a Mediterranean palette, kind of with a lot of Mediterranean plants have sort of fine leaves, but lots of textures of greens and grays. So we've kind of stuck to that kind of a palette. The previous plan, in plan view, this isn't too different, but we had focused on the central courtyard that was accessible to the residents as far as articulating these materials, which you can see in the center of the drawing. But I think one of the big changes that we made in these revisions was to sort of push those materials more down to the street frontage to try to incorporate and the sort of city and the public side of it to accommodate the public and integrate them more in with the project. So yeah, if we want to go to the next slide. Oh, that's the end. Okay, well, this isn't the whole thing, but anyway, you can see the stairs at the corner where that was one thing that we did differently, where we opened that corner up, but we also are showing sort of a tiled pattern on the steps, brought the materials in and sort of helped welcome the public into the space. The center, we worked hard on the terracing, the center stairs, on the terracing of the stairs and integrating terrace planters with the stairs, integrating some sort of constructed seats on the sides with the stairs that you could access through from the public right of way. Yeah, if you go back to maybe the rendering that Jonathan was talking about.
This one, that one?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So again, creating a public space here with bringing in trees for shade and making it a comfortable place and open to the public, bringing the materials from the courtyard down, spilling down the stairs. So we've got the tiled pattern on the stairs and integrating alcoves part way up where you can sort of sit either under the trees or in the sun. And and we did spend some time walking through the Civic Center, through the mall and everything to try to bring in the ideas about public space as they're sort of articulated in the Civic Center through this site too, and to create a strong connection there. So that was kind of our main change from the last round. So.
Thanks, Scott. So I think we'll open it up for comments and questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, we do appreciate the level of thought that has gone into these modifications to the project. It's appreciated. It's a dialogue. So I think we'll just open it up to panelist comments, and maybe we start on the left and work to the start on the right and work to the left. Supriya, do you have comments?
I do have a question. The pathway shown from the city hall, the library, all the way to this building, one is called out as accessible path and the other one is called out as paved pathways. Is there a differentiation between one pathway and the other? Like, is one accessible and one not? Because the elevator is on this side. You just want to confirm.
The state line you see on the top there, that's the one called out as accessible.
Yes.
And then the elevator is here. If people want to access the elevator, they would have to cross all over.
If you enter the garage here, in your vehicle, you would walk ahead and park in the whole area. Back to this elevator from the garage, and then take your accessible.
This is right next.
So anybody walking from senior center would not be able to go to this one directly, they would have to go to the other ones. If somebody's in a wheelchair, I'm just asking about a wheelchair.
If they're in a wheelchair and they park over here, they would access it how they normally. If they park in the garage, there would be ADA spaces near this elevator, and they would take that elevator directly up to grade level and then to this accessible path to the existing sidewalk.
Is there a distance for that, like?
A distance for,
So for example, anybody from senior center, if there's no parking here, they are going to be parking in the lower level, right?
that
Yeah.
elevator lower level also.
I mean,
So
They
I'm just
don't,
trying
I
to
think
confirm
technically the
that-
ground floor,
Okay,
the ground floor, right, is where the elevator
The
goes up to.
elevator accesses both levels of the parking.
Oh, it does, okay.
parking garage.
so a question regarding parking, is the lower level for residents and the upper level for general public, is there like a demarcation there?
No, it's not in the parking discussion that we're on this with the city right now.
So for example, if somebody is trying to park, would they? I'm just trying to figure out what's an accessible pathway. Like my question is, if somebody is trying to park, how many spots would they have? And then how would they get to the elevator if they're parking in the lower level?
okay,
That's
well,
all.
let's get one thing clear.
Yeah.
They're not required to provide an accessible pathway to a different property
Right,
that meets the code because it's
course.
a, okay, okay.
because it's called out as accessible, that's the reason I pointed it out,
Mhm.
because it does show an accessible pathway in the other side.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why I wanted a clarification.
it's gonna be accessible and they're gonna have accessibility on both levels
Right.
Yeah.
via an elevator, correct?
But there's a difference between accessible path with tactile warning strips and all of
Mhm.
that slopes and such, and just a paved pathway.
Right,
So I think that both of them should be accessible, and I think tactile strips and everything can be done in a tonality that isn't bright yellow. It can be done properly and aesthetically pleasing, but both sets. Yeah, we don't want the accessible path to be so far away from potentially users of the senior center who would be wanting to park close.
I mean, I get the point that he's making, that they are not required to have accessibility for another structure, but the parking is supposed to be in that building. So technically, they are also users of that building.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and I think it should be noted that it's one of these public goods that we're talking about, public benefit, to allow full accessibility to other corners of it's a big lot. It's a big lot. So I don't think it's a big onus to put on the owner and the design team to make all those paths accessible.
It's just two paths.
Just two paths.
Just two paths.
Just two paths, yeah. Yeah,
If I can-
that's the intent.
Great.
I don't recall having that in my packets, and it was something I was curious about. Maybe you could help. How do we, what is the accessible path for from the front of the building, from the public right of way, not from the parking lot, but from the street? Where is that accessible parking entrance?
Right here.
Right here at the corner.
So you're coming,
It's a vehicle access site, not a, you can't walk up to, or,
so
know,
you can't get from the public right of way
Yeah.
to, you can walk
Yeah,
up.
there's a.
Yeah, this is
on the side, there's
accessible.
a-
okay.
Okay, even though you're going into a private drive, isn't that a private drive?
Well,
I
it
mean, you're
is,
going
but I mean,
straight from public right of way to the
Right here.
entry.
this is accessible here.
So you can't, and so say
That's
I
level
was,
one.
again, I'm being extreme, just so that I make sure we get everything on the table before. I'm arriving, my interpretation of that goal of that accessibility is we've got these beautiful staircase, which I love. I appreciate all that's been done. But reality is it's
Yeah.
onerous if you were approaching to come into the building at the main entry, right? I don't see a way in. Is there a lift or is there a ramp or
You're talking about to
You
get
have-
into here?
to be the main?
To get into the apartment building?
Yeah.
The path that Tom was just pointing out.
So it's a side entry. Does you have a secondary entry, not the main?
No, it's the primary entry.
It's the primary entry through the lobby, gets you into elevators which access all parts of the building.
So this one that you were just describing, which was so beautiful and I like it and I don't want you to mess it up or anything. I'm looking at this. Do I have a way to get in from the street through that
Not through that
central
staircase.
and entry? I
That's
don't.
only residents only.
The grade change just doesn't allow it.
Okay, so I mean, I think we shouldn't just write it off, honestly. I think if you interpret how accessibility works, to me, that is a monumental main entry and it should be touched on. How do you solve that? You know?
You'd have to do a ramp on the side in front of the
Or
building.
maybe in this big mass right here, there's some hidden lift or something. Doesn't have to be exposed. I'm just saying right now, as a visitor, I have a secondary entry versus the main one. I was trying to understand, because I really like what you did here, and I think especially landscape wise, it's enhanced beautifully. But one part of me wants that little archway to let me roll into there and go up a lift and end up in the center courtyard, just like everybody else. So.
But you basically are through the lobby. I mean, the code allows for handicap accessibility through the very main lobby up into an elevator, and then you're in onto that same level. It's just with such a grade change, 13, 14 feet, there's no way even to ramp it. I mean, it's very close. We're talking about 20, 25 feet to the right of the main plaza.
Which is an
Yeah.
extension of the lobby.
I think.
No, I think we
There's the
can
lobby
turn
right
to
there.
the city later. Today, we don't have to
Yeah.
solve it, but I'm, you know, I'm working with the high-rise buildings. Nobody anymore says, oh, well, they can come in through the parking level. It's just not happening. So I'm just saying, be sure we address it. That's all. Because
Could be a-
it's a beautiful entry. I'd hate to lose any of it.
And she did point out it could be a lift, doesn't have to be a ramp.
Can be
Yeah, could
concealed,
be a lift.
can be wherever. As long as the approach is equal for everybody and I'm not entering the sideway.
Okay, so that recommendation would be, consider adopting accessible pathway at central location of building, right, rather than side entrance.
Yeah, if possible.
If
I mean,
possible.
again, it's.
Or a lift.
Or
Right,
lift, that's
accessible
fine.
pathway, right?
Anything.
Okay. Thank you. Supriya?
Last time we met, Chair Shepherd had made a comment about creating more porosity in the design. What are the efforts made to create that? I think there was a comment about I think there was a level that you said that it needs to have more porosity with the outside to bring the outside in. I think that's the comment that Chair Shepherd had made last time regarding the entrance and the lobbies. What's the effort that has been done to kind of resolve it?
Well, I'm not sure we can really get much more porosity. I mean, it's actually quite a tight site, and you know, we can't allow the public into the site for safety and security reasons. I mean, the lobby is very open to the street, people are able to see into it. The idea with the plaza is that those steps could have had a gate and a fence at the bottom, but they don't. They're publicly accessible for seating and the landscaping. And then there's all the area around the cafe, which is public seating. But there's no real way to get a path through the site or something like that.
I think that's a fair comment.
That's a fair
And
comment.
they,
Yep.
they have addressed that. Correct. It's not just that long set of stairs. It is kind of a moment of
Yeah.
elements. So
I have no further comments. Maybe I'll have something later. Go ahead.
sure, please.
Yep.
Alan?
I like that they took a lot of our suggestions from an architectural standpoint. I think they added a lot of elements that will tie to the city nicely. I like the setback of the entry. I like the integrated planters. I compliment you on your color scope, as well as adding tile and softening the roof line. That helps a lot. Aesthetically, it's a much better looking building for our location. Technical standpoint, I'm not going to comment on, but the architectural, I appreciate the revisions and I like what I'm seeing.
Okay, good.
Thank
Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of comments, and I'm gonna probably mark up these plans. Again, they're suggestions. They're how I speak sort of out loud with a pen. So please receive them in the most collegial manner. So I'll just flip through some pages that I had. Of the 184 spaces provided, how many of those are publicly available?
That's still in process.
Still in progress. So to TBD, okay? That's an answer I can live with. Flip over to the site plan, if you would. So I appreciate the, even this is fine, whatever. Okay. I appreciate the idea of, it sounds like the designers are taking to heart the public nature of this building and what are the public goods. And so one of the things that I realized that is a public good is the quantity of affordable housing. That's actually the major public good for this project. The state is mandating that certain number of housing units are brought forth by every city. And this developer is taking it because they could create a less dense project by right, but they're increasing the density to offer a public good, which is affordable housing. And I think we probably have broad consensus that affordable housing is a necessary thing for livable cities. So in that sense, that I think is a public good which should be heard. I don't know that we at this point can crank the building any further to the west, perhaps, to increase that size of that middle plaza. I don't know if you saw that, John, but probably can't open up the building any further, you know, parallel to the property line, one bank of it, so that inner courtyard increases in its width.
No,
Right now-
the main way to do that would be to lose the 90-degree parking opposite City Hall, and I don't think anyone wants to lose that.
No, not on that side, on the other side,
Yeah, the other side, but there isn't, no.
because I think you're on a podium, right? So your type 5 over your type 1, those don't have to be in the same geometry.
No, I mean, I think that it just has to do with light and air to the units and to, you know, I mean, how far away off from the property line. We have to
And
get
there-
access down the side.
It is aggressive slope, but if that was some consistent distance, then that would, you could splay the building open a little bit and create more of a public moment. I'm not saying it has to happen, it's just some sort of notion that I was thinking of that. Let's turn to the elevation.
On that note, though,
Yeah.
we do have some very tight fire, LA County fire
Yes.
accesses on there and
Of
some hose runs, and so that
Yes.
and then our biofiltration is
Okay.
down in that front end, and that's,
Oh.
it's incredibly tight.
Yeah, and
what's
I think
happening
they've got
on
a, don't you have a couple transformers you have to accommodate?
Yeah,
in certain-
Transformers, there's an easement. I mean, we can't really, display it.
All right.
We would love to make it bigger
So-
if we could.
Here's another thing that on this front elevation, and I'll turn back to the perspectives. The front elevation shows an allowable height. This is this lower dashed line. And then a state allowable maximum height. And I think it's important to know, it's important for the public to hear that this building is taller than allowed by code, but it's taller because it's offering, again, that public good, which is an increased density of affordable housing. So detractors that might say this is too tall of a building, it doesn't match our context, because in some of the sections you see that we asked for, and those sections should be available to the planning commission. They're going to ask the same question: how tall is the buildings relative to your building? So I would expand those sections and have them available as exhibits. But the idea that the building is taller is allowed by the state. And if you have problems with what the state is mandating the cities do in terms of numbers of affordable housing, then that's November 5th. That's who you vote for and how you vote and all that. And that's not a topic here. But that allowable height increase is because they're offering an increased density of affordable housing. They did step it back. They have definitely articulated that massing from Park Sorrento, which is very helpful because we don't want to live next to buildings that are 5 and 6 stories tall. It just won't feel right.
There's another gim on that front.
Yeah, another good one.
Yeah.
Let's pull back to the perspective. The street perspective, any one of them. Yeah. So I like the direction of how this is developing since last time. But I'm wondering conceptually if it's gone far enough. So let me address a couple things. Let me tell us sort of a narrative. Like, could this be a building which looks like an old building wrapped in a new building? Meaning that the old building, which is the taller portion, which has the tile, which maybe has some different types of articulation of the fenestration, is of a slightly different language than the front, more rectilinear, more contemporary wrapper set. So to me right now, those two languages are sort of exactly the same. The fenestration on the upper portions, which is the setback, what I'll call more traditional massing, is very similar to the articulation of the fenestration on the lower wrapper portions. And I just wonder if there's, and again, a suggestion, if there's a way to either modify some of that, how that fenestration looks. Do some of these windows have arched tops or curved tops or something? Is there some idea about that? And then can I draw on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing is these eaves. Right now, those eaves, and I'm glad they're showing up because I think they're a necessary part of this language development. But in my opinion, they would be more in keeping with a more traditional language if they were if there was a gutter added and downspouts, and then instead of the more blocky corbel or blocky eave, perhaps the eave is extended another foot, and maybe there's a shaped corbel, which is for outlooker, which is a little more in keeping with a Spanish Mediterranean feel. So when you look up from the street, maybe there's less of them. I don't know what the spacing should be. You see that kind of old world articulated eave that you would find on a building of that language. So that's, again, something I think that whatever you choose to do, you have to show this detail to the planning commission. I mean, that's the big sell on something that we've been talking about, is how do you articulate that back language? So you have a choice to do what you'd like to do, but I think that this more rectilinear outlooker, or whatever the right word for this is, perhaps could be shaped a little bit. Perhaps it could be a little more graceful, little smaller, and it might then lead to, again, with the incorporation of perhaps some curves at the top or something of that nature that changes the language of that back building to something which is more old, if you will. So, yeah.
I have a question. What if, would another way to do it would be to do the arch openings on the corners?
The balconies.
No, I think the
I
front
mean, all the
stuff,
way up.
the front stuff is the wrapper. That's the contemporary. Calabasas is both old and new. Our cities are both old and new.
Trying to meld.
Yeah, if there's something which is a language in
that, yeah.
front that's contemporary and a little more modern. I mean, the units are all look the same in the inside, right?
Mhm.
So, but
I like
then
that
something in the
idea,
back,
sure.
which is a little more traditional, then maybe there's a nice marriage between the old and the new.
I mean, you have the city hall on one side and the Hilton Garden, and some of the features could be picked up from these two, and they are all kind of speaking the same language.
Yeah, and then I think that this color, that color shouldn't be the same as that color. Because the back bit, and you mentioned it, that it's, a darker color will recede. So maybe that shouldn't be white like the front is white. Maybe that could be, I don't know, just a light yellow, or I don't know what it could be. I'm sure you have colors. Or that, right? So all that, so that back articulation of that old massing is something which looks different and is colored differently than perhaps this front wrapper. And then at the base, I like the idea of this brick, but I feel like the brick should be, that's the second wrapper, right? The base. Maybe that brick, everything at the low condition is textured like that brick, so that you don't have stucco. You have kind of brick everywhere at the first level. But
Yeah,
that's
nice.
again,
Rustication.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's again just a feature that you guys consider. Let me see what else is happening in my notes. anywhere that you can, I'm looking at the rear perspective from the senior center. Anywhere that you can, has an arch in it, should have a tiled roof. So that language is always about the old. And then it's sort of sitting, and maybe it's textured with brick, and maybe it's in front of the new.
Just a continuation from here.
It's a continuation, right? So that there's this language, right? And then there's the last thing that I will say is we can go to an elevation for this. And I don't know how to. Yeah, an elevation that shows this elevation. What is that one? So in this elevation, we see this back context, which has these balconies. And how deep are the balconies?
That level, I think they're about 6 feet deep.
Yeah, they're pretty deep, right? So they feel very contemporary, like cantilevered out. Maybe there's an opportunity to add in some decorative corbels, which again, you know, it's all fake anyway, because you're going to cantilever it structural, but maybe there's a way to bring in some language of the old world that says the way we did a balcony back then was we had a corbel, shaped corbel, beautiful, and it's supporting the balcony, even though it's kind of not, right? Just again, elements of style that I think could differentiate what my premise is, which is an old building wrapped in a new building. Those are my comments. So take them or leave them, but Camille?
Can
You wanna-
I add one thing before she starts? Specifically about the west elevation. The other elevations are pretty attractive, and this one, I feel like it's it's treated like it's back of the house. It doesn't have those elements as we have on the other ones with the color, and like you could add some stucco or something like to change the massing. The massing is not as obvious here. It does look like it's the back of the house. So just maybe treat all of them the same way, with the same love. But the other ones are pretty attractive. So that was my last comment. Go ahead.
This part in
I
particular.
agree with you. I have one note just about this center portion. I'm sorry.
No,
I know, I wasn't going to start with this page, but I will since we're on it. It's just, I kind of wondered whether this could be an element,
Right.
just so we didn't feel like it was an office. You know, again, it's just so hopeful that it breaks into pieces and elements. And so all it needs to be is color, you know, and a slight change in elevation or some kind of articulation. So in keeping with maybe part of what both my colleagues said is that once you start to add a more decorative things happening here, then maybe it shouldn't just run straight across, but this could be a way to break up that important part, which appears to be the premium part where you get a big patio. It's just one idea. Okay, and first I want to say I think the architects did an owners beautiful job at respecting our comments. I know it was a change because it is the desire of all of us to introduce a contemporary vocabulary. It is very hard to be the first few people who do it. And so I think it's a graceful introduction of a little old and new. I like the idea that Will had that it might be two separate buildings, but wrapped by a modern building, maybe an older building. But I do still have a problem. Can we go to this front page? Sorry, I don't know. Oh, big later. Okay.
You want the rendering?
Yeah, maybe that's
No,
easier.
you can go on the screen.
Can I steal your pen? I know I did bring my colored pen today. Just the covers from, or that one's fine. So with his beautiful little corbel there, whatever you've got going there in the eave, I love that. I do think this feels a little more ranch style. I don't mind that. I don't mind that it's not as decorative as that, but I do think it does need some softening. It's a little bit square and bold. But this element, if I take this off, is still a office building to me, or it's still too bold. And so I'm just wondering if it's scale. I'm sure you can't do this, but say the upper portion became glass or something, just to get rid of some of that bulk up there. So this kind of band was a little less strong. I only care, honestly, about the conversation between these two buildings. And this, I'm not gonna see this when I'm standing here.
Mhm.
I'm gonna see a white box with punched holes. And I'm very close to our absolutely magnificent city hall. And that bothers me. So I would say this area didn't get quite the attention I would have liked. And so maybe, not that you can do it, so I'm gonna share, that's all we would do is give thoughts. And that's the, I did mark something up, and I'm not seeing it. Do I have my paper? Yes.
Move on the other side.
Well, I'm just gonna put it past that. I guess it must be my next sentence under there. Anyway, I don't know if there's a way to break this a little bit, just so that this height, where it's just the peak, I mean, this is the highest point, it appears, is from the front of the building, one more secondary transition. So I don't know if it means it only comes back to there. Now you say, Camille, how in the world would we do that and still keep the number of units we've got? And of course, there's no way for me to make you not have the number of units you want. But I do think when you look, I'm going to do the opposite of what Will said. When you do look at this, if I get it right side up for you guys, or upside down, there we go. Is that there's this, to me, this is a big courtyard, because it means it's taking it away from this perimeter, which is so valuable, right? And so I'm just wondering, could we, at one point, I don't know where I do this. Did I get upside down here? Am I got Park Sorrento on my side, just so I,
This is the front.
am I in the front? No, it's
No,
not.
this is the front.
No, I'm
Yeah,
here
you're
in the front.
over
Okay,
here. Yeah.
just wanted to be sure I was in the right
Yeah.
place. So just, if just right here, this we're doing that, and this we're doing that. And then the rest, you know, I don't know, it might be too much to ask to do that kind of thing. But just so the front with these two elements, let's try to find a site plan. He's got one here for us. Where'd that site plan go? I didn't have one in my, okay, yeah, that's it. Where this space becomes a space. Right now it's cockeyed, you know, it's okay that it's angular, but I think we all know how amazing this solution was for this very difficult space, you know, this city hall space right here, but you flows through, it's beautiful. They could have argued, oh, we don't have enough space, la, 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 everybody says that. But really this feels wrong, and almost, I too wish that this would open up, but I actually wish the whole building would, so that I got even 2 more feet here and 2 more feet, and then, you know, you can angle it. I don't know if you could pitch it, I have no idea. But to me, this is our most important thing, is to respect this very beautiful, beautiful element right there, and not encroach on it with a, you know, 5-story white box or 4-story white box. I mean, this is a hard conversation right here. So that's one thought there. Okay, let's see what else I
You
got.
got a thought on that.
I think the other thing, and I appreciate, I heard the landscape team, and I think they did a good job. It's a beautiful project. Is I just still don't like how the parking is here. I do wish there was a completely landscaped band, the appropriate 5-foot required band. You know, by giving low-income housing, you get away with a lot of things, but I don't ever think it's an excuse for not meeting the goals of the community. So I do think if we could, it looks like, can I go back to here? You know, we can hide a lot with plants, and I think you can see. Oh, that this is effective because it softens it, but I just feel like this whole thing should be landscape, because we gave so much, I mean, 40-something feet to the inside courtyard. I think this relation.
We explored that, and we did put that 5-foot
Oh, you
planner
do
in
have a
there.
5-foot
Yes,
planner?
and
Oh, I
and
don't
we
see it.
couldn't, we lose 11 surface parking spaces by pulling that out because of the incredibly tight from the parking space to the fire lane to the parking spaces on the, because I know that was a comment
Yeah.
that came out of the first one. And we appreciate the nose and headlights, and wanted to put a really robust landscape
Mhm.
tree to really buffer that, and anybody leaving City Hall. So the middle ground that we found was getting as many of the planting fingers in there and getting some robust trees in those to try to add as much green as possible. And then Jonathan also spoke about the arch and the inset, and then landscaping those again to bring that green and bring some ivy into there. And that's it's the same perforated architectural metal. So you don't see into the parking structure, but you do have that natural airflow, but, and then those leaf planters underneath. But
So there
when we-
are planters.
there are planters in there, yes, but when we got enough to have the planting area, then we had to go to parallel parking, and then that just wiped out a ton. And I know those are probably the most valuable parking spaces.
Oh, yeah, I think they're a gift and I think they're beautiful. I think every job we work on, there's no room for the 5-foot band, honestly, and we have to lose something, and that's the answer. If the answer is that's a goal of the city, we should, again, try 5 times to get it. If you tried and
Yeah, we did.
if you can't, you can't. But I do think there's certain things that, you know, the city feels, and really almost all communities now want, and that is that it's landscaped and at the nose of your car, and that's pretty much written up and important. So
And
if
then
you,
that was the purpose that Jonathan pushed those planters inside those arches. To be
Inside.
able to bring that, so.
okay, I see that
Yeah.
here. And you know what, honestly, on this one, I don't know why I didn't notice it. I didn't see it on. I was missing a first floor and a land and a site plan, but I do see it right here. Okay, so that was that. Mine are very painless, although they're commentary. I also wanted to just say, I still do, oh, it's because I changed package. I still do. I heard the word transformer up towards the street. I do hope if that has an enclosure on it, it will be beautiful. I do think we should make sure that any element that's out there at the front of the street is beautifully detailed.
Could it be subterranean transformer?
Oh, it's not above there.
There
I don't know.
existing transformers.
Oh,
Oh,
well, yeah, so, but they're gonna be exposed.
But the service upgrade is probably, what, this is probably 2,000 amp facility?
That sounds about right, yeah.
So could you make a vault? Is there space to make a vault?
It would take away more parking from down below. That's the problem. And it's very difficult to get the utility to approve vaults.
Whose power are they
Hilton Garden
transforming?
Inn, I think, is part of it.
Sorry?
I think Hilton Garden Inn may be part of it there. It's right,
Someone else
it's near the.
Some other
parking lot.
owners on your lot with their
Is there-
transformer?
It's in the right of way.
Right away.
Did I see a transformer or it's not?
Yes, it's a public transformer. yes.
Oh, that you can change that.
Well, I think that just as long as you make it pretty, or
Right.
your part is pretty, so it hides it. How's that? That's my opinion.
Put a tree-
Landscape around
bush.
Put a tree. I don't care.
Perennial
I'm very
tree.
happy with the bush in front of it.
Hide the
I'm okay with it.
Landscape.
But I don't think you should disregard that you expose something, you know, when that's sitting there in a parking
We
lot,
we
it's okay.
100%
You want it
agree with
pretty,
you. We
right?
would
I'm
not
sure
want
you.
it there either. And that the utility companies don't like us to put trees or anything
Well,
in
but
front of them.
there's a way to make them beautiful though, right?
Public art,
What's that?
public art,
Public art. That's
there's an
beautiful.
opportunity.
So again, I do think there is some way to do something here. I know it would take 2 feet out of your courtyard, but I do think this is too tight, that relationship. I touched on the trees. I'm trying to be quick here. Just a moment. I did feel also that this very tall elevation should have either texture, although a beautiful smooth trowel I think is beautiful also. I don't have a problem with that. But I liked what Will said about maybe, you know, using brick the whole way. I don't know. It's just such a tall elevation.
Our intent there was just to articulate material, so you would say, this is the residential entry, this is the
I like
more
that.
active. And if those materials wanted to flip flop, so you have brick at the cafe.
No, I
probably,
like this. I think that where people can touch, the
Yeah.
most texture should be there. It should have a priority.
And then the brick also continues down on the plan. too, so
Mhm.
you
So we
still
have
have
we
that.
have two positions. One is brick with intentionality, or it's all brick or all stucco. Where should we land with our recommendation?
I'm okay with the two materials. I'm okay with brick at the front. I like the brick because I like
Isn't
the
there- isn't
texture.
This brick over here, this massing?
Yeah.
And then it goes up.
And I just wouldn't mind if that were also, is all I'm saying. I don't mind if these were the same, even if
Both brick.
they could both be brick, but I
Yeah.
like that they at least introduced something.
So the
that-
recommendation
at a
is, or the
smaller
consideration is brick everywhere at the low band.
Right.
Just consideration. It's not a mandate.
And then if I kept picturing there could be a lift in here, if we could walk in there, that was all. And then let's see, front approach accessibility is very important, I think. I don't want to leave anybody out. Everybody has to come in the front, same door. I did have a comment that when you go to signage, I thought there was beautiful names for this department you could think about, and beautiful fonts, and everything that I see is still rather generic on there, which is probably this early. had the same comment about how tall this building is. I think we have to respect that we are getting a common good, but there are plenty of us who want to fight out the state with what that requirement is for our community. And so I think stay as tight as you can. I see a 1 indicated here. I don't see what that material is. Is that the penthouse for the elevators maybe, or whatever that is?
Fall off of the elevator.
Yeah, so I do think that should be the darkest then. If we are gonna try to conceal it, don't let it be white all of a sudden, because that'll fill up. And then speaking of white, so since you know, everyone here already has heard me for several years. I hope that that myth that is as deep and dark as you can get it. I don't think we should fight with City Hall. I think you should step back from City Hall. So if we have these 2 tones, that one maybe should get a little closer, because it's just going to come forward and it's going to fight with right across the way. And I think that should be literally the only building in our community that is white. And we, you know, since whether it's down the scenic corridor, or I know you can't see this from there maybe, but everything here is meant to blend in. And I think
Darken the white.
I would darken it in some way.
That's our design. So
Your intent, yeah. The mist is just almost there, but maybe it could go a little bit. Build it.
On that point, at the planning commission, you should bring samples of all this.
we do. We have to.
Yep.
Great. And then I was worried about this metal siding. I didn't know where that was.
They're just calling out
Just
the
downspout.
downspout, not
Only the
ignore
downspout,
that.
not
Yeah.
putting- oh,
It's
thank you
just for
very much.
reference,
That was a
coloring.
scary color.
Yeah.
You know me in white. and
I didn't like it either, but I figured it out.
It
It'd be
said-
better if
Just
they
that
didn't
downspout
include
color.
I
that
see that, but that's, I don't usually.
on their
put it.
submittal
Oh,
separately.
very good. Okay, so let's see what else I have here. I think that one elevation we talked about, breaking it up. My opinion was, I liked your idea of mushroom, but I like it a lot better than this. I don't think I had much else. I think it was coming together and appreciate your integration some of our comments and did a better job than we would have even done. So
Thank you, Camille. So Glenn, why don't we do this? There was several strong recommendations that we can touch on. What I'd like to leave the applicant with is 4 or 5, 3 of these recommendations that we think are appropriate for them to consider. Again, they don't, it's not a have to, but this panel has provided what I think is some betterments for the overall presentation, with the goal of 2 things. One, we have to satisfy what the planning commission is asking us to do, which is kind of try to make things look prettier in the building context of our city. But we can't tell you what to do. So it's up to you what you can absorb into that. You have a skilled designer. They're obviously in a short period of time have incorporated a lot, but there was a lot said today that I think is worthy of your consideration and your time. So let's just write out those recommendations. And I think we can then, the panel here, I think it's time to move them on to planning commission. I think because one of our constraints, and I want this to be noted in our notes to the planning commission, is that we are constrained by public hearings. There's just a certain number of public hearings by state law, again, that we need to move this into the public hearings where everybody gets to discuss things, starting with planning commission, going to city council. This has to go to city council. So that's the real political side. So
It will, but
I was told it has to go to city council.
it will no matter what.
Okay.
There's no official trigger in the sense that they're removing a heritage oak tree, which is
Yeah.
a council.
Mhm.
Site plan review and the basic kind of permits that have been asked for here are to actually planning commission approval level. But the fact is, any project of any substantial level always gets either called up for review by the council anyway, or gets appealed. And this project's gonna get one or both of those, so
Okay.
it's gonna go to council.
So that was the forecasting. So we want to give you all those meetings that you need. So we need to, as this panel, agree that if they can take these recommendations that we have and move forward, that we're okay with that. With the proviso written to the planning commission that we are limiting our review to 2 meetings. Other projects, we've seen it 5 times.
Yeah, that's right.
Big projects like this, countless. Hotels, oh my God. We can't do that to you by law. So this panel has to be cool with the idea that what we've given them so far is all we get to, all the bites of the apple we get. And we have to have a consensus for that.
Well, I'll jump in then. How's that? As always. My thought is that I think they were very, you have a great team, so we're not worried. And I think.
Can I suggest something?
Yes.
At the beginning of the meeting, we discussed the fact that there are some people here that have had speaker cards, and we were going to go through a discussion and then maybe incorporate comments if you guys want to consider that. So if you'd like to, maybe hearing from the public and then making your final recommendations in case they bring up something that
I don't want
you'd
to
like to address. Okay.
We're talking about aesthetics and massing and
architectural, yeah.
building stuff. The public can comment all they want on the things that they want to talk about, but that doesn't impact the things that we're talking about.
Okay.
So
All right.
And the public hearing is actually at the planning commission, not
Yes.
here.
exactly.
Yes.
So
Correct. And that's fine. Since you mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, I wanted to bring it back up.
I want to listen. I for sure want to listen to the public. We're going to do that. They're going to do that. But our recommendations to the planning commission have to be from this panel. Right? Otherwise, it's
Agreed.
a public hearing,
Agreed.
which is it's not for our mandate. So why don't we try to condense it down? Camille, did we interrupt you?
Well, I just want to say one thing. And I'm with you, and I think.
I apologize
We're
for
gonna
interrupting.
get, no, I'm always talking too much, I know. We want to hear what, I think we all want to hear what everyone has to say and be so beautiful, but maybe we could just kind of touch back on what we were all thinking,
Sure.
because it's hard, we never get to talk prior, we're not allowed to, so we kind of just have to hear what each other says and, gain knowledge from our colleagues here. I just didn't stress enough, and I just want to put it down, that this shape to me is so important, and that I just think that they need to consider it, whatever. I don't know whether they're allowed to touch the street, what they're allowed to do, but this relationship, I hope they'll take a look at, and what that entry piece is. I think it's really important. Just
Okay,
feel
so-
tight.
Camille's comments are front door accessibility for everyone.
Yep.
Turning the corner to the space making between the new building and City Hall.
Right. The difficulty of that pinch.
Right.
And I gathered also, actually hearing more from both of you, that it's also how this is addressed architecturally. This particular corner is especially critical,
It's critical.
right? Part of the welcome as well. It's not just the spatial, but it's also architecturally this.
What is that corner?
Yeah,
Because what do you see when you're standing there? Because the beautiful new detail at the top,
Mhm.
I can't see when I'm standing there. It's
Too high up.
It's too high up. It's set back. I'm gonna see it. So I think it's important.
Okay.
And color,
Right.
definitely.
Was that your recommendation?
I think that in keeping with you is color and texture should gradiate further back just to exaggerate the setback as much as we can.
Okay. You
She
get that
also
one,
said
Glenn?
dark and the white.
Right.
Mhm.
dark
Right.
and white for sure.
Mhm.
Less cool because there's a beautiful color of white at this building, and I'd just tweak that so it's not as cool of a white.
And something else I heard from Camille, but also from Will, and I think everybody, was to use more. I just want to make sure we got it record. More of the brick, more of that rustication in that lower level.
Consider it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just consider it.
And but that goes to Camille's second point, which was texture and setback of color. So the architect's pretty skilled at this already. I'm sure they can do this, which is consider elements of texture and color in the receding of the mass of this building.
Well, while you're saying that, here's Camille again. One last second, but do I have a time frame? I received this package and it looked like this. I loved this, but it's missing the building, and I would really like to see it with the building. Because I think that it's gonna tell more of the story than anything we're doing. How is it relating
Yeah.
to our beautiful building?
No, you
right
could
here?
tip that in so easily.
Dump that in.
Yeah.
Help us understand, is it a big white box, or is it really something sensitive and that's respected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, Alan, how about, do you want to just echo, or is there something new you want to
I think
say?
you guys covered it. I'm not gonna add anything else.
Okay,
You're making me look-
Supriya?
I made
No, no.
my comments at the start. I think they made notes, so we are good, right?
We have
Yeah, the
extensive notes.
And the
Absolutely.
accessible path would be another thing for sure we want to.
Yes.
To both.
Right.
yeah, right.
And I didn't hear it just now, but there was a considerable discussion about marrying old world and new world in the entire building. Maybe that was the part about the rest, bringing the
That was the
rustication.
E.
They go together.
And
Yeah.
if
And the
it's
coloring
gonna,
and the wrapping and the arching.
And
Yeah.
arch openings, for example, Will was
On the upper
sketching on the
floor,
upper
yeah.
part.
that's,
as an
that's
example.
for the architect to
Yeah, they'll
consider.
figure it
Is that a legitimate aesthetic agenda to apply to this building, or is it, or not? I mean, that's the designers, but I'm just, if you're gonna go, don't do half measures. If you're gonna put a, outlooker roof eave on it, then make it be appropriately scaled and detailed so that it looks like it fits. But, they know this.
More trees, was that part of it
I
also?
don't get to
And
that.
hide the transformers? Okay.
I mean, whatever they can do, just
Right.
if we are gonna expose something that right now is not an eyesore, important to look at.
Okay, so do we have it? Because we have to write this up in the minutes, right?
We will do that and bring the minutes back.
All right.
Will the
Okay.
signage be coming back to us? Or-
Signage, well, we
Is
haven't
it
had
separate
anything
package?
proposed yet.
Separate.
So, and we've done it a couple ways. We've done it through a condition of approval. If the project does get approved, then we can condition that to bring a sign package back, and that'll go through the process as maybe a sign program.
I think
Okay.
what's as bold a sign as that is, it's a design element. That big wall is literally a
Well,
billboard
I-
sign.
That's not up to,
I'd say
that's just, they just put it there to.
No, I know,
suggest
that's what I'm
it's there.
saying. Once it's done, I think it just needs sensitivity to it.
Mhm.
That's all.
Good. So we'll get the recommendations. I would like the applicant to have a chance to respond to us as necessary, just as what they've heard. So that, this is again, a dialogue. It's not a one-way street. So if there's anything you guys want to contribute or whatever, please do so.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. And I think that all of the points that you brought up, and I think the best example is exploring more trees along the parking. We did, and we tried to make it work. We have studied arches at the top floor. So again, already the things that you guys say, this is something we should explore, we have, and it would be great if it was an iterative process, so you could see us put those in and go, it kind of feels a little odd. Or say maybe it does or doesn't. And I think the comment about adding maybe some old world to the outlookers might make the arches look a little bit more in place, because they looked a little out of place in that. Because usually you put arches at the base because they're designed to carry structure. So why would you be carrying structure at the top level? I mean, intuitively, with just architecture that, but if you're looking at it in context of wrapping an old building with new, and that might have already been there, then it may make sense.
Or maybe there's just a lintel. Or an
Exactly.
implied,
Yeah, it could be.
stucco lintel
Yeah.
or something.
So again, the first comments we received from you all, we took all of the comments that we could and we put them into the plans, and we're really pleased with how the design came forward, and we're very pleased with your feedback from our design team and their integration of that. And I think these final recommendations are meaningful recommendations, and just like the last iteration, if there are things that we feel that we can put into the project and make the project better, we absolutely will. And I think if you look at what we've tried to create at the corner by stepping the patio area down and having that cafe area bleed into the sidewalk to make it feel like it's an extension of the public into the project versus the hard corner we had before, really explored all of those opportunities. We tore apart the staircase and tried to get a bigger landing in the middle of it. And then you have handrail that goes, you have to have handrail like 5 feet, and all of a sudden you got handrail all over the place. And there's also just structural challenges with hooking that out and trying to create more space. So we pushed our team as hard as we could, and I'm just happy to hear your guys' positive feedback of the changes that we were able to make, and we'll take these final comments and do our best to incorporate those.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. And so at this point, we're going to close the reviewers' comment and owners' comments, and we'll open it up to the public. what time are we supposed to finish by 4:30?
4:30.
Okay, so we have a little more than a half an hour. I don't know how many people would like to speak, but please feel free. It's not a hearing, so we didn't really need speaker cards. It won't be necessarily recorded. But please, please think about your comments in the context of what this panel is really doing, which is what the building looks like and the features of the building that integrated to our city in terms of its aesthetic presentation. Nothing about why it should be here, why it shouldn't be here, what it takes away or what it gives. How pretty is it? Can we make it prettier? So, Tom, how do you want to do this?
Well, the IT people have asked that anybody speaking be in this area because we need to pick them up on this microphone. As Will said, it's not a public hearing, but we definitely want the public's comments to be heard by staff and the panel. If everybody's going to speak, and by the way, I've got 22 attendees showing up on Zoom. If everybody took 3 minutes, we don't have time. So I just invite everybody to keep it 2 minutes or less. Okay. Whoever can run up here and elbow everybody else out of the room gets to go first.
My name's Pat Serrano.
I'm going to start
Yeah.
a timer, by the way.
All right. Is there any chance you could put the parking garage up on a screen or find the page that you've got for the parking garage?
We can go ahead and start your
All right.
comments.
I have a very strong concern about the parking garage, that there is some danger there and it makes it unusable for the public. Every aisle ends in a dead end. So if we enter a parking aisle and we don't find a spot to park, now we have to back out of that aisle or make a 3-point turn to get out of the aisle and then go looking in another aisle and hope that we can find a parking spot in there. Think of every parking lot, there's a way to turn around in an aisle, go around to the next aisle.
Hold on.
These dead,
This lady's talking.
Yeah. These dead end. So because of the limited width of the aisles, it actually could be a 6 or 7-point turn that you would have to make to get out of that aisle. The chances of hitting a parked car during these maneuvers are very high in my eyes. If I were to hit a car and I had to make an insurance claim to pay for the damage that I did to another car, I would want to know who designed this parking garage and built this plan and hold them responsible. I'd also want to know the building and safety department that approved the plans and maybe hold them responsible financially. I see this as an accident and a liability waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please tell me your name, the record.
Oh, Pat Sarano, S-A-R-A-N-O-W.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jerry Kramer and I live here in Calabasas, Mahone Heights. I'm retired now, but I used to work for an architectural firm, Nadell Architects, maybe you know them, for 38 years. And I was responsible for the shopping center development. We designed the 2 centers in Calabasas, one on Agora Road, Las Virgenes, the Albertson Center, and also the Gelson's Market Center. Before it was just a freestanding Alpha Beta, if you recall that. I've been a member of the senior center since it opened, so I'm very aware of its attributes and contribution to the senior citizens of our community. The 136 cars located at the applicant site were often 100% full with cars. Some of us had to drive around and then find parking at the Commons Shopping Center in order for us to go to a Founders Hall when they had a large event or at the senior center. Now that COVID is slowly ending, I think attendance will then, ultimately return. I was concerned with the applicant's project in 2 areas: architectural design and parking. At present, I'm somewhat pleased with the current proposed design. And it's more in keeping with an ambiance. although perhaps needing additional arches. And I agree with a lot of the comments that you made with extending the eave and corbels and so on and so forth. Parking, however, is now my primary concern. The number of parking spaces available to the senior center is an issue and is confusing. More people will go into that, more people discussing. There are dead end parking. People that come in, again, these are senior citizens driving cars. And they're going to go in those aisles and what are they going to do? They're going to back out. Just think about it. My proposal is twofold. One is that I wonder if the applicant who owns the office buildings across the street can provide parking stalls for all the employees of the library, city hall, and senior center within that office building complex. That'd take a lot of cars away from parking that would be needed. The other proposal is to construct a small parking structure built into the slope area at the south end of the proposed apartments. The structure will not affect the applicant's building in any way. The cut and fill can easily be designed to balance out. And then we can be able to add another 38 cars specifically for the senior center visitors, just yards away from its entry. Here, I know you're pointing at things.
We don't accept,
Well,
this
Don't
isn't a
accept
public
it.
here, we don't have, this isn't a public hearing.
I know it's for you're the planning commission,
Well, no, they're not.
or you're the planning panel. So here's a plot plan and the section through the parking structure, which creates another 38 cars. And this would be very, very convenient and it has solved a lot of the problems that's been on us now for the last 6 months.
You've had the floor for more than 3 minutes now, sir, and there are other people to talk. I do want to ask that if anybody's going to bring up an issue, it'd be nice if you could bring up something new and different.
Well,
We've
that's
already
what
heard,
the-
for example, I understand that that particular idea is different. By the way, that's already been mentioned among all of us and staff, and it's been explored at least once already,
Well,
I know of.
I explored.
So thank you. I
That's
know
for
it's
your-
also a
for
very
your
expensive
information.
proposition for the applicant to handle.
Thank
I
you.
know that too.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. Hi, I'm Charlotte Meyer. The term was was mentioned and I'm not clear on it. So is there a secondary entry that was asked? And then the other term was accessible pathway. I'm not sure because I couldn't see all the designs. Where was the secondary entry in the driveway coming into the bill so secondary entry was in that driveway. Is that correct?
There's an entrance in the front directly from Park Sorrento, which they showed with the recessed area, and that's right here. There's also an entrance over
I
here
don't want to
from
use up my 2
directly across from.
let me have my 2 minutes, please. Okay,
Well, I'm
there is-
sorry, you asked a question, so I was
I
trying to
know.
answer it.
okay, thank you. You don't have to point, it's taking up my time. There is so people will be walking down, let me point this way over here. Can I use this?
Of course.
People will be walking, oh, this doesn't have the packet on it. People will be walking down the driveway and there will be an entry to get into the building from the driveway. Is that correct?
There's a parallel and separate path from the driveway. There's not a pedestrian path in the driveway. It is adjacent to it and it's separated from the vehicular.
That relieves so much of my anxiety because I was thinking of mothers walking with strollers. I was thinking of people exiting and people walking in. It's almost like walking on Ventura Boulevard almost. So that is my concern. Thank you very much for mitigating that. Also, I would like to add that a rear elevator is proposed. So if anybody uses that elevator, they will not have to use steps to get to the street level. Correct. Okay, one more thing that I wanted to clarify. Lighting. People will be parking there at night. We're going to make sure that they have lighting because older people like myself don't see well in the dark. So we might need some expanded lighting. The street level parking, this is what concerns me, is that the spaces will not just be for the general public in terms of the people who are using the library, Founders Hall, Senior Center, but there will be other people having access to those. The guests, the cafe workers, gardeners, the plumbers, the managers, the construction workers. A lot of people will be able to use that. Is there any way to divert those kinds of people to another section of the, in other words, I don't know if you can put some signage up or something to direct people to another part of the, maybe the shared parking on the other side of the street. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
That is being explored. A lot of ideas along that line are being explored, including city workers potentially parking somewhere else. So I mean, there are a lot of ideas. That's why we didn't want to address parking numbers, because that's all being discussed in a variety of ways with different solutions. So
I know that because
Okay.
it was asked by one of your panelists, and the answer was, we don't know, 184. So that has not been finalized yet. But I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Davis, and I've been a resident of Calabasas, what is now Calabasas, since 1978. My personal opinion is the design of the building is completely inadequate because of the parking issue, and I think the parking is the elephant in the room. And the discussion of colors and landscaping is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Okay, I would ask everyone to look at this from the standpoint of urban planning. Okay, is this project going to improve the quality of life of the citizens of Calabasas? Not just the residents of the 26 or 31, whatever the number is, low and very low income apartments. Okay, the contribution to our community of the senior center and the library is phenomenal. And this is going to just dramatically impact it because people can't get their old coots like me, can't walk from the commons parking to get over there. And we just will not do it. And we're the ones that are going to pay the price. So I would just ask you to look at this project from an urban planning standpoint, not just meeting this, in my opinion, stupid state requirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hengame Madadi. I've been a resident for 23 years in Calabasas. Of course, we love to have new projects, new life coming in, but we have to realize it has to be cohesive, as you guys like it to be. And I really strongly agree with you. This is the heart of the city. And if you go out and you see a block, it really takes away from what we try to build here. So no disrespect to you. I wanted to say that, yes, do arch whatever windows in the back, make it look like this, but different color. So it would act, go well together with what we have. You don't want to have something that's like a sore eye when you come out of the city hall. That's all I need to say.
Another speaker. I want to go ahead and make sure we get through everybody in the room before I look for people on Zoom. Well, there's at least one, Betty Weiser. So I'm gonna allow Betty to talk. Her hand was raised. Unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Davis. The parking, the 2 acres to do so much, it just seems overly ambitious for 2 acres. I do believe that something's got to give. And I do love the look of what you're doing with the building. In my opinion, it just needs to be reduced by a certain amount so we don't lose the senior center, the city hall, the library that we are all enjoying, children, adults, it's an amazing space for the community. And it looks to me that at this rate, we will be losing all of that in just to get more housing. And perhaps we need to look at another area to do more low income and more coffee shops and all that somewhere else. But somehow it needs to be reduced so we can use the parking space. So the families, this is a family oriented. I've been in Calabasas since '72. It just, please take in consideration this is a family area. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. She can, I'm gonna lower the hand here. All right. Anybody else who's going to raise their hand, now is the time for those that are attendees. And I've got 20 showing here. So anybody who's attending by Zoom want to talk, now is a good time. Because after I say we're done, we're done. I'm not seeing any of their hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, thank the public for their concern and comments. I think they were smart and well received. One way to encapsulate that is we do have just 2 levels of parking right now, right? And so, and the dead end thing is, you know, perhaps a security concern, a safety concern. I hate to say this out loud, but could there be another level of parking? Let's say you go to the Skirball, and you just keep going down level by level because it's constrained and tight, or any of these, you know, city buildings. So if there was some portion of the parking, which perhaps was another level down, and again, it add costs, and I hate to even say that, perhaps then some of the tandem spaces and some of those dead end corridors could be alleviated. And that's not even something that, I mean, we're ever going to see on the outside of the building, but it might address something about how the public is able to use this building for parking, if that's really what's being talked about here for the public amenities, which is the city hall and the senior center and the library. So it's something to think about. They could perhaps look at it. It's again, it's not in the aesthetic presentation, but we as a panel, because we're all just different professionals, are supposed to mention these things. So we're not going to dictate anything, but you've heard what you've heard. And you can imagine that going through the public hearings, you're going to hear this again. And it's going to impact both planning commission and city council, which ultimately goes to a vote. And we've seen in the past, and I'm just bringing this up, you've seen fair warning that projects which don't listen sometimes don't get approved. And I want to see this approved, and I want to see it approved in the right way, which was my original comments were, what are the public goods that this is giving? What is the urban design considerations that this is offering? Because being allowed to develop this great property from an economic point of view, right? That should come with some amount of give back. And I think we just heard some of it today, which is got to make sure the parking works. Thank you, Will. So, Tom.
And I think that they can.
Well,
It's not 2, it's Tom.
the state limits our review of a project like this to 5 public meetings, not more than 5. And this is the second one. We have to go to planning commission.
Oh, I see.
And typically a project like this is going to take at least 2 meetings of the planning commission. This will, I mean, let's be realistic. It's going to get at the council. The first meeting council will have is 5. That's it. That's number 5. So the council, we're going to handicap the council and give them only 1 meeting to comply with the state law.
I didn't understand it was aggregate.
Yeah. Right. And I'm sure most of you know, we have these community development forums that we try to have. The state has taken that away for us because they've said, you city of Calabasas have too many meetings and you, like a lot of other cities, kill projects through time
I say,
by making them go through meeting after meeting. And that's what the state told us. And so they took it away.
I would buy
So
any-
unfortunately, that is the situation. So what we're trying to do is really concentrate, work really hard with the applicant to try to address problems succinctly, quickly, so that we can get through those meetings and meet that requirement. Now, the state actually for other sites similar to this, the communities, I would say Calabasas is lucky that we don't happen to have this circumstance, would make this what's called by right approval. We wouldn't even go to any public hearings. If we had a mass transit stop within a quarter mile, I think it is, this half a mile. If we had one that had enough bus traffic, we do have transit right across the street, but it doesn't have enough service to meet the standard by the state law. But if it did, we couldn't even take this to one hearing. It would just be approved.
That is writing it down.
This is, I'm talking about. We're talking about state law, so just keep in mind that this is the direction the state has been going. They keep cutting down what we can do. So we're gonna try to take the fullest advantage of the 5 meetings that we can. And that's why we're really happy to have all you here. We're happy to hear what you have for input.
Be by their design, any kind of change in their design? When is it that all of their comments will be incorporated into their?
Great
design?
question. When this panel looked at it the first time, they had a lot of input given to the developer. The developer, as the early comments from our panel said, listened and took a lot of that and applied it. So they've already done a lot of what the panel asked for. They have some great things to chew on again this time, and their responsibility is to show and demonstrate to the planning commission when they go there next, that's where they're next, that they listened and applied it, made changes that meet what this panel asked for. And that will be something that will be conveyed to the planning commission when we get to that. That will be a public hearing, by the way. So by all means, the commission is going to hear from everybody in the public on the front end before they even discuss the project.
And when is the planning?
We don't have one scheduled yet because they have to do more work and then complete the plans sufficient to take it. And then there'll be public notice, everybody who is on the public notice, and of course, everybody in the senior center is gonna know. So you'll find out when that's ready, but I can't tell you a date because we still got, they have to chew on this, come up with new plans.
Tom, can I make a recommendation?
Yeah.
Whoever is leadership at the senior center, right, needs to meet with planning, you guys, your staff, and with developer to work out some compromises. Because this isn't gonna go well if it turns into one of these clubs and pitchforks meetings where everyone comes up and knocks on this. It's because then the commissioners are like, what do we do? We have to listen to our constituents, but we have to move this forward. And same with city council. They're right. So we're in a rock and a hard place. Something has to be compromised so that senior center, there doesn't have to be 50 of the same comments. There's some distinct things contributed by that community, which is wholly different than this community, this panel, right? But impacts what we're talking about here. And the developer, of course, has to agree.
And it's a big give and take, recognizing, of course, that you're talking about a property that's privately owned, that effectively we've been trespassing on for years to use it for parking for city facilities, even though it's private property. So this developer, we're asking to work cooperatively with us to solve this problem. They're trying to do that. We're going to try to help them do that better. And those discussions are happening with the developer. I think that's a good suggestion for us to.
So it doesn't need to be in our commentary at all.
If there is a leadership hierarchy, I don't know. Everybody's still going to come to the hearings. I mean, we've done this thing before, tried to do what you're talking about, and then you still have everybody showing up at the hearing and saying whatever he or she wants to say. So I don't want to think we're going to get that far and achieve that goal, but it's worthwhile to have the dialogue.
Can I say something, Tom? And I just want to touch on what Will said. It's not going to go away. And so even bringing a really clear voice, which is critical that you do, there has to be a solution that comes with, comes to the meeting. We already hear the problem. And I think this gentleman's beautiful drawing, and that was so gracious of him to offer. Can I steal this?
Yeah.
What everyone is saying here is think outside the box. Will started it at the last meeting. What's happening here? When I worked on UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute across the street when they built Ronald Reagan, there was no way to do the parking. I'm sure some of you have been there. It's a nightmare. But if you go down far enough, there's a little tunnel and it connects you. What are you writing here?
Fire. This is a fire thing.
But we worked it out too. And I know
Yeah.
this gentleman did too. I'm sure it can be solved. I think the key is not to close down on it and not to think, I'm going to say this in front of the city, not to think it's your responsibility.
Yeah,
The
100%.
reality is, if you look at, say, for example, the Lost Virginies, the hotel that we all went through 15 times. And they ended up doing a partnership with the city on that little strip of parking. I don't know what the creative or right solution is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if this little tunnel goes under and suddenly this gentleman's given the opportunity to do the parking underneath the hotels, and then this comes through and there's more underground parking under what's a surface level parking lot that's a waste here. It's just that the density of parking is evolving and there's all this surface level parking and we're trying to pack him in with all the responsibility for the city. And that's not really fair either, right? So what we need is a creative solution where we look at that and we look at across the street and we look at this partnership and each of those to be able to allow us to build something like this, but do like they did for the hotel, find a solution that the city participates in.
May I ask you a question, or Tom, I think? Will the public have a chance to review the plan and communicate with the planning commission in advance of the hearing?
We always, as part of what happens, so you get the notice, the plans are available. We've already got a permission from the architect to make these plans available. They're posted online now. The next iteration will be able to post as well. So the answer is yes.
And how far in advance?
Well, it's usually about 2 weeks.
Oh, that's what I said.
I mean,
Very reasonable.
with the notice period under the law is 10 days. Okay, so it's just about a week and a half. We're gonna try to do 2 weeks, but
That's very reasonable.
yeah. Yeah.
Teenagers. Like this, that's what this is. This is the next.
For sure.
Being created.
Well,
Right,
let me walk this forward a little bit.
Yeah. We need to finish the
We
meeting.
need to finish the meeting. Let's say that there was a carve out of that land on the south side, right? Oh, the owner of the land has to agree to give that land to somebody, the city. Then their density increases and their by right things change because they're giving you some portion of land, right? That portion of land then has to be held in trust. If this is I'm just spitballing this project all the way through, this parking facility in the back, right? Maybe it's
You're about if they did
in
something
the
back here.
hillside, right? The big
Yeah.
retaining wall, which we know we can do because we have one right behind the commons, right? Which is 50 feet tall.
Sure, you can engineer it.
Uh-huh.
You can build it
You
if
can
you have enough
engineer it.
money.
But my early point was, what is the civic making on this thing? That is civic making. That is the city stepping up and saying, we have a responsibility to our city to, and I'm just talking out loud
In a recording.
in a recorded fashion, ruining my response, my reputation. But and again, this is just fully conceptual, hypothetical. But I could see a scenario where that gets carved out, provided by the owner to some trust, and something is developed like the senior center was developed, which addresses downtown parking in this area, which is so close. Now that's millions of dollars. Does everyone want to bond here? Probably not. You'll never vote that, right? So how practical is it? Zero. So the issue about parking and safety and everything else has to be internalized to this project, because even though I love this idea, it's practically dead on arrival. who's gonna vote that? And you think the West Calabasians are gonna vote for a parking structure here? No. You'll never, who's gonna pay for that? Does the city have $10 million? They're not sitting on any millions of dollars to build that. So it's a practical impossibility unless A, the developer does it, can't ask for that. Or two, why? We issue a huge bond and the city does it. You'll never vote for it.
The reason you can't, we're already asking the developer to do as much as, to do a lot, and we're gonna keep trying to do that. However, under the state law, the same one that limits the number of meetings, they automatically get what's called a parking concession. We can't touch, under the state law, the number of parking units we require for their housing. And we're talking about trying to keep parking for the city uses on their land that we never truly had the right to use in the first place. So that's sort of a trick bag that we're trying to work through. And we thankfully have a developer who's willing to work with us to do as much of that as we can. So we're trying to do as much as we can. We're going to look at everything we can do. Who knows, maybe the city can partner and help with some funding. I don't know, but we're exploring. You had a matrix that had what, like 15 different ideas?
15 ideas.
Right.
That we're
So
exploring.
all this stuff has been shared with the city manager, it's been shared with the mayor. There's been dialogue between the leadership of the company that these gentlemen work for, and the city manager. I know they've had at least one meeting on this very topic. So a lot is in process to try to solve the problem. I do want to remind everybody that Will has to end his panel's meeting in the next 5 minutes.
I just wanted to give a couple more details. This little structure is within that hill, totally within the project, the property. And the way I did it, the section, it is cut and filled and it balances out 50-50. There's no import and no export of soil. And I'm utilizing the existing fire lane as part of our ramp. So there's very, very little impact. It's not going to cost $3 or $4 million. It may cost, it's going to be a lot less than a third level down. I tell you that right now.
That's
A
for
lot
sure.
less.
But
So it's a very.
yeah, no, and I love that idea that you're bringing some solution to the meeting, but Tom said it best. We have gotten used to parking on land that wasn't ours.
No, I know.
Bottom line, this is
We
their
should-
property, their private property. They're entitled to build it per the state's rules. So the benefit, that public good that we all enjoyed, close proximity to the senior center, et cetera, that was never ours to begin with.
Should have brought it up.
Yeah, planning on when
Well,
actually when they're
that's-
building this. building,
Just saying, there's,
Well, where's that?
Well,
Just because, you know,
most people don't know this, but when this whole complex was designed and we first went out for bid, it had a parking garage underneath it. Okay, we were gonna have a lot more parking there. Problem is, it came in way over the budget. City couldn't afford it. And so we reconfigured stuff, including the street out of Park Sorrento, to try to get as many parking spaces as we could on the surface because we couldn't afford to build the parking garage. So we've already been through the same pain these guys are going through in terms of trying to make parking in subterranean fashion pencil. It's hard to do unless you're going to make money on something above the ground. The city, of course, wasn't going to make any money because we're a government agency. We were just going to have to pay for parking. The only way we could do it was on the surface. Now, as it happens, right, we had the benefit of a parking lot right next door and basically a shared parking arrangement for all the uses. Well, shared parking means somebody might park there today and they may park in front of City Hall tomorrow, and they may park in front by the senior center another day. All this is shared, right? They're gonna try to honor that. That's why we're trying to make sure, and they're honoring, trying to have part of the shared parking continue. It may be, I don't know, 50 spaces, it may be 80. We're gonna try to get as many as we can, and certainly not zero. We're way above zero right now, and we're gonna try to have it safely designed. I appreciate the comments about that. So we'll get it done best we can, and we'll just continue to communicate with the seniors at the senior center and everything. Okay. It's 4:27.
Great,
We're
well,
gonna, we can't, we don't have permission to pay people overtime, so that's why we have to end.
yeah.
Okay.
that's fine. So I think we're ready to bifurcate the comments we had about the aesthetics from the whole public planning parking thing. That's your job with the developer, not our job.
We're doing
We've
it.
done our job. You have the minutes that we can write up and send to planning commission. Our panel needs to decide whether or not we send this to planning commission. Yeah? We have consensus that we're ready? Then we're gonna, excuse me. The recommendation is that the project as it's designed with potentially the updates per our recommendations will move to planning commission without us having to see it again. And that the note of we feel limited to 2 meetings needs to be put in there for planning commission. So they pick up on things that they need to pick up on. But, we appreciate the efforts. Thank you for the hard work and good luck with planning commission and city council and all the rest of us. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.